Rancho Notorious is a 1952 film starring Marlene Dietrich, Arthur Kennedy, and Mel Ferrer, and was the third and final Western directed by Fritz. When a young man's fiancée is murdered during a robbery, he goes undercover as an outlaw to gain entrance to a ranch that is used as a hideout for outlaws, run by a mysterious woman. Once there, he must ferret out his fiancée's killer while maintaining his cover and possibly falling for the owner herself. As I mentioned, Fritz directed 3 westerns in his career. Today, he's probably best remembered for his silent film epics like Metropolis or Spies, or his film noirs. But in 1940 and 1941, he made his first 2 westerns, with The Return of Frank James, starring Henry Fonda, being a sequel to 1939's Jesse James, and Western Union, starring Randolph Scott and Robert Young. Both were bright, Technicolor films that showed us this Austrian immigrant was more than capable of telling entertaining, action-packed tales of the Old West. And then he returned to the dark, shadowy world of noir thrillers, making movies like Manhunt, Ministry of Fear, and Secret Beyond the Door. It was 11 years before he returned to the Western genre, bringing us Rancho Notorious in 1952. It was in Technicolor again, but the story was quite different, leaning far deeper into the film noir themes of hate, murder, and revenge, to quote the opening song.
Hate, murder, and revenge.
And I thought it was extremely well done. The poster for the film doesn't really represent what this movie is. Of course, Marlene Dietrich is billed first, so they felt this was the right way to advertise. And maybe for some people, that's the biggest draw. And there are a couple of brief flashbacks where she wears saloon girl attire, such as that, and she gets to do her trademark husky voice singing at a couple of different points, but the movie is so much more than that. Marlene Dietrich's character of Alter Keene is kept mysterious for quite a bit of the movie, as the hero, played by Arthur Kennedy, searches for clues to her past and the whereabouts of her ranch called Chuckaluck, the name of which was whispered to him by a dying outlaw. The name of Alter Keene is very interesting, and it kept making me think of her having an alter ego. I realize that's a very surface-level interpretation, but everyone remembers her as a wild, fun-loving saloon girl, without realizing the hardened crime boss that she's become without anyone, other than a select few, becoming aware. Marlene Dietrich is very good in the movie, and the stark difference between the woman we see in the flashbacks is night and day, intentionally from who we meet at Chuckaluck. There, she wears men's clothing with wagon wheel grease smeared all over her arms and has very simple terms. Any outlaw can stay there, provided he comes with a good recommendation. He doesn't ask anyone questions about anything, and makes sure he gives her 10% of whatever jobs he undertakes while under her protection. Marlene Dietrich is very believable as she intimidates bad guy stalwarts like Jack Elam into obeying her rules, but then is equally believable as Alter Keene undergoes her change of heart later in the film. But it's Arthur Kennedy that is really the heart of the movie. The opening scene is a precursor to a shocking scene in The Big Heat from a few years later, a fantastic scene that I did not see coming when I first watched that movie, by the way. But Arthur Kennedy and his fiancée are happy as could be, the perfect couple, and the whole time you know that it's all too good to be true. And it is. Only minutes later, she is brutally murdered, off screen of course, with her screams making it far worse than if we watched her get shot. And just like that, this easygoing cowboy is transformed into a revenge-fueled gunman. Arthur Kennedy is really great in the role, obsessed with finding the man while managing to maintain his cool, as it takes longer than he'd like. The facade that he keeps up is pretty solid, but you can see it slip the more he interrogates Alter on several occasions about the brooch she wears, which was stolen off the body of his fiancée. He and Marlene Dietrich are very good together, with her character quite obviously growing more attracted to him, but Arthur Kennedy plays their scenes in such a way that you can never be totally sure if he's just using this attraction to get what he wants, or if he feels the same way. Leaving it ambiguous is so much better, where he could still be devoted to his dead fiancée, or if the life of crime he's pretending to dabble in has started to erode that devotion. The way he acts in the final scene does have me leaning towards the latter, but I'm not sure. And I love the line that Alter says to him at one point, "I wish you'd go away and come back 10 years ago." There's so much regret in that line that it illustrates the inner thoughts of Alter Keene better than anything else. Mel Ferrer is the third lead, and he's the weakest aspect to me. Mel Ferrer is typically a dependable actor for me, always best when he's playing an urbane, kind of slimy character, but in a Western he doesn't quite fit in. I'm not sure if he made any other Western films, other than appearing in some Western TV shows later on, and that's probably for the best. He looks too clean cut and stiff to convincingly play a deadly gunslinger like he does here. His dynamic with Marlene Dietrich is quite good though, playing her boyfriend that gets increasingly jealous as her interests shift to the new man around who happened to help him break out of jail. The rest of the outlaws that populate her ranch are so unique and filled out by an assortment of colorful actors. Jack Elam I've already mentioned, but George Reeves as the scar-faced womanizer Wilson, Frank Ferguson as the former Reverend, nicknamed Preacher, unsurprisingly, Francis McDonald as the game-legged Harbin, and Lloyd Gow as the ruthless murderer Kinch. Each of these men play their roles with a lightheartedness while at Chuck-a-Luck that belies their true nature that comes out when they're threatened or while they're pulling a bank robbery. William Frawley has a small role as a one-time wealthy saloon owner who we meet in the present, grumbling about his bad luck, losing a fortune to Alter Keene, the fortune that affords her the life that she now leads. And finally, an uncredited John Doucette plays the outlaw that gives Arthur Kennedy his first clue. John Doucette is typically bald in pretty much everything I've seen him in, but here he seems to be auditioning for the role of General Custer, as he has a luscious blonde wig and facial hair. The action of Rancho Notorious is, across the board, excellent. There is a scene in a barber shop that involves a gun being held under a sheet, reminiscent of a great moment in Western Union, that leads to a literal knockdown, drag-out fight between Arthur Kennedy and a man that doesn't like his questions about the mythical Chuck-a-Luck. The fight is fantastic. Using what feels like handheld camera work, the choreography and editing all work together to create a tense and lengthy battle that destroys the whole barbershop. Speaking of the editing, there is a scene where Arthur Kennedy first recognizes the brooch that is pinned to Alter Keene's dress. The scene starts with close-ups of his face, then the brooch, then to each of the men in the room, as he wonders which one of them killed his fiancée and gave Alter the brooch. The close-ups get tighter and more frequent, the cuts become quicker, and becomes incredibly tense. It almost felt like a foreshadowing for the duel at the end of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I loved it. But the shootout at the end does not have a drawn-out sequence of close-ups. It's instead a close-quarters gunfight in one room. It's 2 against 5, most of whom carry 2 guns apiece, and it's wonderful. The gunshots are loud, booming reports that echo through the room. I won't spoil the outcome, but it's a great scene. For all the hard-hitting action, Rancho Notorious is also a somewhat strange movie. There is a bizarre sequence, one of the flashbacks, where Alter and a group of other saloon girls are having a race using men as horses. I've never seen anything like it, and I'm not sure I enjoyed the scene, but it was kind of funny. There's also a section where Arthur Kennedy is tossed in the middle of some small-town politics as he and Mel Ferrar's character of Frenchie are in jail with the local government, who are nervously awaiting the election results. Their losing would mean they all hang, so they're not too keen on sticking around for the final tally. And the song, The Legend of Chuck-a-Luck. Like the ballads that drove movies such as High Noon and Gunfight at the OK Corral, Rancho Notorious also has a song that narrates the action and crops up between scenes, playing over montages of Arthur Kennedy's quest. The problem is, the term Chuck-a-Luck just sounds kind of silly. It's apparently the name of a roulette-style casino game in which Alter Keene won all her money initially, but hearing the sonorous voice of William Lee sing Chuck-a-Luck, Chuck-a-Luck over and over is more comical than it was probably intended to be.
Listen to the legend of Chuck-a-Luck, Chuck-a-Luck.
That being said, it is a very catchy song, and just talking about it now is getting it stuck in my head all over again. Rancho Notorious is an unusual but very entertaining blend of film noir and western elements that I really enjoyed. The Technicolor cinematography by Hal Moore is beautiful, and he utilizes the sunsets and dramatic doorways and architecture of the ranch house to create some gorgeous shots. Fritz Lang knew how to make good westerns, and I wish he'd made even more. Highly recommended. Thanks so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, I hope you'll check back to Hildebrand Productions for more. Thanks again, and adios for now.